Well, we thought it was going to be a historic night here in Sydney, Australia at the eve of UFC 293, but it was historic for all the, I suppose, most unexpected reasons. Dennis Gradov and Casper here with Submission Radio, 20% off with the code word submission at Manscaped. And we have three of the gentlemen right now that we want to break down this crazy, crazy moment of Sean Strickland winning the UFC title. Of course, we have the Canadian Mike Bond, Cockring, Jose Youngs, and the legend himself, Oscar Willis.
I didn't get a nickname. He actually likes me. So
Legendary.
I addresses
the
you as a
legend.
human being. He calls you by your name, not Cockring.
We didn't know your name until about 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, he knew you had a cock ring. It's so weird.
Guys, let's just kick it over this. What exactly happened in the fight? Israel looking noticeably different, not what we expected. Dana White came out here, said that he looked slower. The reactions just weren't there. What do you think happened? Was it an off night for Israel? Was it him not being able to recover after being dropped in the first round? What did it come down to?
Probably all of the above, honestly. I think early on, the game plan was obviously to go heavy on the kicks and the leg kicks. Dan Hooker kind of alluded to something in your pub talk being like, we're going to kick the leg off.
Remember anything that happened in that pub talk?
Sure, but you know what I'm saying, right? And I think
Mike never forgets anything.
No. Well,
Sean-
they tend to keep it because they're really good with facts and figures
Sean
and numbers, aren't they?
checked a leg kick in that first round that I think really bothered Israel, and then of course he dropped him. And I think it was just a really bad style matchup that a lot of people overlooked with the forward pressure and his ability to kind of slip those punches really well. And I think he just had the perfect fight, honestly.
Thanks for dressing up, by the way, Mike, for this show. Jose,
You're like shit, Mike.
Jose, Cockrings aside, this was not the performance that we thought we'd see from Israel. What do you think was the catalyst for Sean Strickland being able to not beat him in the wrestling, but actually step forward, close the distance, and be in his face the whole time without copying those counter shots that we thought that would be coming at him?
Well, I think it's essentially what when Eugene Barron was up here when Israel kind of handed him the mic off to do his post-fight scrum. Eugene said that every single time Israel threw anything, Sean Strickland countered it. He did every time, and it wasn't like lazy counters. He would find the openings and he would just keep Israel not second guessing, but he wasn't rushing in. He wasn't throwing these huge strikes because Sean was always countering with something, and then the first round he got clipped, and I'm sure Israel felt the power of Sean Strickland that we've all heard about and dropped him. So I just think Sean Strickland had a perfect game plan. He stuck to it. You kind of saw when Israel would be against the fence, Sean would come in with a flurry and then get out quickly. It wasn't like Pereira when he hurt Israel, he just kept throwing these bombs, and then Israel leans back and then threw that haymaker home run in Miami. Sean Strickland go in there, pop, 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 and then get out. And then Israel would throw that shot, and Sean wasn't there. So Eric Nixick and the team at Extreme Couture put together a perfect game plan. Sean stuck with it, and he did exactly what he needed to do. And now we have a new middleweight champion.
We didn't ask for a breakdown, Jose. We just wanted your thoughts. So okay, a couple of words. Do you understand we have 20 minutes here?
Yeah, you could have just watched Eugene Behrman's scrum. You didn't need to recite the whole thing.
This is not BT Sports. This is Submission Radio.
Y'all are mean.
No. You're all right, Cockring.
Yeah, and your dick's got metal in it.
How do you get through airports? I was going to say, what makes this... I know Israel's not going to take this loss too hard. He's very firm already about the fact that he's got a lot of other things going in his life. But on paper, it's a lot worse than the Alex Pereira loss, because with Alex, he was winning that fight right up until the very end. Whereas this one, he got beaten almost from the very beginning. And it's not like Sean, like mentioned, didn't have to use the wrestling. And the fact that it was from the very beginning to the end. Where do you think this goes as far as like the greatest upsets of all time?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like everyone always says, like Sean Strickland reminds them of like an American Bisping. It reminds me of the Bisping win over Rockhold, which is actually a fantastic analogy I just made there. But so for me, it's one of the craziest ones because we were out last night and people were asking me how I thought the fight was going to go, and I said honestly, like I just don't see a way. Sean, I don't see a path to victory for Sean. If he's going to wrestle, well, you'd say Whitaker's possibly a better wrestler than him, and Israel handled his wrestling easy. So I just kind of assumed Israel's going to sit on the outside and kick the shit out of his legs, to be honest. So I think Mike made a good point that those seem to stop at some point. Maybe there's a nasty check in there.
He was checking a lot of them really
well. Yeah, but there's a couple. So maybe that was part of what went wrong. But again, I think it's probably a combination. Sean's forward pressure, Israel having an off night, and I think for them, it's going to be interesting. Do they have the attitude of like, oh, fuck it, it was an off night, we'll get the rematch, don't worry about it? Or are they going to really like, hey, let's try wrestling Sean? Are they going to really mix it up? I think their preparation will be interesting, but it might just be one of those ones where it's like, his style is just so awful for some lazy.
Yeah, there's a lot of. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, just quickly, the fact that Ronda Rousey was beaten by Holly Holm, UFC 193, Israel losing to Sean Strickland 293. There's something in the water.
This really is where the magic happens, but but yeah, I mean, it's gonna be what happens from here is really interesting, right? Because Eugene.
We're not talking about your personal life, Mike. This is a serious event.
I know. I'm trying to be serious here. I think I'm the only serious one at the table here. I'm kidding.
Here we go.
But no, in all honesty, you mentioned, was it a?
It's like a Canadian
Seriously,
swimmer
riddled
over
with
here, and he's
fucking
making fun
STDs.
of us.
Wow. Okay. The question is, was it an off night for Israel? They said they would do a rematch next week if they could, but I don't know, man. Who knows? This could be the decline of Israel Adesanya. How many fights
it
has
light,
he had?
Mike.
No, I'm
Jesus
just being
Christ,
serious.
no wonder
Like,
they fucking
The team
no,
like
but
you
he's
already.
fought a ton of fights. Things start catching up eventually. Like Dana was saying, he looked slow. He looked all that stuff. We'll find out in the next fight if it was an off night or if it's more than that.
We've got an unofficial Dan Hardy here, so I got to ask the rematch. Who wins it?
Israel wins. I would imagine Israel wins the rematch.
When do you think they could do this, though?
more detail than that.
The one question where it was supposed to be 3 words, he goes for 45 minutes, and then the rematch question.
Israel by Gogo Plata, UFC 300.
Oh,
They're-
don't be a fucking loser.
When do you think we could, okay, Dana's obviously leaning towards we do the immediate rematch. What the UFC wants is typical they get. It's a weird situation because you've almost got a logjam at the top, right? You got Dricus, who clearly deserves it, right? And they wanted that next. If Hamzat can beat Paulo Costa, there's him. Jared Cannonier came and made weight. The Colby Covington rule. He's obviously got to be next. He did it. So it's like,
Do one of you guys just say UFC 300 Sean Strickland main event? Imagine if someone fucking told you that. Not long
maybe.
ago.
Well, you look at the
There's no way they do
timeline.
that.
We spoke to Tim
they're
Simpson.
not doing that.
He was.
Better not. It gets fucking demonetized. I need some views
It's
to get
pay-per-view
paid.
points. It would just be the craziest thing. But
We
go on.
spoke, so obviously the team would like it ASAP, right? And I think their plan was to fight before the end of the year. 295 is John Jones or Stipe. They're probably not going to do it on that card. 296 is most likely, I don't know, maybe Leon and Colby, right? So then maybe the one after in January, maybe Connor Chandler, maybe.
Alex and Yuri have to fight at some point too.
There you go. So is it possible that maybe we'll be waiting a while before this rematch happens?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, listen, they've got a lot of champions that need to be booked. I think it's possible we don't see this until 300, right? I mean, it might just work out like that. But
Which would be annoying because then it's like, what do you do with Dricus? What do you do with like Hamzat or Paulo? I know it would just be a shame because those are two massive fights that we could have had.
Fight over it. I think February might be Las Vegas because of the Super Bowl being in Las Vegas. So if they want to have Sean Strickland fight in Las Vegas, they could do Israel and Sean in February.
This is very inside baseball now. We've got to the point.
also, I like the idea of like the UFC want to capitalize on the Super Bowl media, right? There's so much news about this and that. And then the guy they capitalize on with is Sean, and he's like fucking talking about killing dogs and shit. Like,
Yeah. I don't know. That seems like a bad idea. You could throw it on anything, but it's going to come down to Israel, right? Like, how long does he actually want to have off? You listen to Daniel Cormier and John Anik and Laura Senko at the end of the broadcast there. Like, Daniel Cormier was very firm in saying, like, I don't want to see Israel fighting for a title anytime soon. They should fight someone else. He's been fighting too actively and relating it to himself when he had 3 title fights in a year. So, I don't know. It's tough. And if you're Israel and you need to be ready for this one, because if you lose that one again to Sean, then things get real dicey.
Honorary Aussie, he's now the UFC middleweight champion. Just let's focus on Sean Strickland as we wrap up. What does this win say about him? I mean, a lot of people weren't giving him any credit. What does it mean right now for the UFC to have Sean Strickland as their middleweight champion?
Trouble, lots of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, my Twitter mentions are going to be just lovely every time he fights.
because of the cock ring?
Because of the cock
Okay.
Do you actually have a cock ring?
I don't actually.
Breaking news.
Have you? What's those silicone things you used to put around your cock and vibrate? Have you ever used one of those? What are those called?
They're like the Jello rings.
It's like a Jello cock ring. So you could have one of those if you want to try it out.
Why am I trying all these things out now?
Apparently,
Don't be selfish. It's good for the missus, you know. Don't be so selfish, cock ring.
yeah.
The cock ring is for you. The jelly ring can be for her.
Sean Strickland is the UFC middleweight champion.
Anyway, Sean's a great champion.
I mean,
we're
well,
supposed
I
to talk
mean-
about Sean here, Jose.
Anyway, this is an impressive thing. You like to talk about stuff.
I do like to talk about stuff, and I don't know. I mean, Sean Strickland is an incredibly active fighter, so it'll be refreshing to have the middleweight champion.
Jose's just feeling a bit down because the guy who jerks off over anime as well has lost tonight, you know?
Mike Bond has never lost in his life.
That's true. That's true.
Just friends.
I think it is remarkable, though, Sean Strickland's journey in the UFC, going from this guy that nobody thought was going to become champion, coming down here to Australia, winning over the crowd, and then him and Eric Nixick and the team at Extreme Couture getting this done. Is this, could this be kind of like the moment of the year that nobody expected, Mike?
Absolutely. I didn't see this coming. I don't think any of us expected to get on a plane for 15 hours. I know you guys are shorter and expect to leave here with Sean Strickland as the champion. It's very surprising, but it shows how crazy the sport is, right? Like, it keeps delivering in these wild ways, things you never expect to happen repeatedly happen. It's, not to be too serious, but very privileged to be here covering these kind of fights.
I mean, literally 3 years ago, Sean's knee was hanging out of his leg. He fell off the motorbike before. He was in his racist grandpa and stuff like that. He's overcome a lot of things to become a champion. Inspirational.
It can be, yeah.
It can be.
The story in the right context, you can see little moments of when he is explaining it. You're like, that's why I asked him. Like, this is kind of deep if you think about it in the right way. His story is pretty remarkable in a lot of ways, like perseverance, all that crap.
I feel like the jet lag just hit all of us collectively at once. All of us.
Let's finish it with you, Oscar. Legacy-wise, we just watched the Stylebender movie, incredible movie. Israel's been able to bounce back through a lot in his life. How do you look back on this event? How do you look back on today? And how do you look back on legacies, whether it be Sean's or Israel's, as we wrap this up?
I think when you have something like this happen, you kind of need the rematch to happen to truly put it into perspective, right? Like, if Andy Ruiz knocked out Anthony Joshua and that was a massive upset, but then Anthony Joshua beat him handily in the rematch and no one gives a shit about Andy Ruiz anymore, So I'd be curious to see the rematch. I understand the people saying that, well, maybe Israel doesn't deserve it, meritocracy, because of the way the fight went and stuff, but I'd be curious to see the rematch just to see if, was it an off night? Is Sean's style so bad for him? There's interest for me in that rematch. Once we have that, I think we'll know. But like a reporter here said, Sean's name will forever be mentioned as one of the craziest upsets in the sport, And I think this will be one of those ones that, like, Sean was already very popular amongst the fans, but now he's got, like, validity. Because like he said, he talks so much shit, people forget he can fight. We just beat one of the best middleweight champions ever. So now I think no matter what happens in his career, he'll always be a fan favorite now because he's been good in their eyes,
I think last thing, just before we wrap, worth mentioning, I know Israel came out briefly. We were wondering whether he would come out at all. Fair play to him for coming out. He sort of passed the mic to Eugene. I know some people might make a whole thing of that, of like, oh, why didn't he talk at length, this and that? He doesn't want to address the loss. But I feel like after the Pereira fight, he sort of proved everything. He handled that loss so well. For him to sit here and repeat everything that he basically said that night is just kind of pointless. Also,
I'm sure you'll hear it. Just got to subscribe to Freestyle Bender. I'm
exactly
sure that's
right.
coming soon enough. So
Look,
that was a smart move.
He's a very generous guy with his time. I mean, the guy was at multiple movie premieres. Literally at the start of we were literally talking about, like, if we were fighters, we'd be locked at home. You don't want to catch like the flu or COVID or anything from anybody.
Casper, same thing.
Exactly right. Yeah, well, there you go. You don't want to be catching things the week of the fight. So he's running around doing a million things, million appearances, et cetera, et cetera. So for him not to address it, I don't think there's any issue with that.
And it is a privilege to share this week with you, gentlemen, as we wrap up. Mike Bond, Jose Youngs, two of the best guys in the game. Don't let the cock ring stuff wear you down, Jose. You're a legend. Oscar Willis, of course, legend as well. And thank you so much, gentlemen, for sharing this moment with us. I mean, we talk about this from time to time. We've been able to be at a few great moments, big moments together, and it's kind of special to share this one with you guys. So thank you so much for joining us. And another crazy event in the books here at UFC 293 here in Sydney, Australia.
Sorry, Anton Turkalj.